Ladies and gentlemen, this gentleman we have here, we have heard from him with every single speaker we've had. This man has been listening very closely to everything everybody said. So I want you guys to do me a favor, and I want every single one of you to have a question ready. I wish we had that kind of time. Anyways, ladies and gentlemen, this man right here, this mystery character we have sitting at the edge of the stage, is Tete DesJours. Ted Dour is an Air Force vet with a background in cryptology, linguistics, cyber warfare, and network engineering. Ted lives in the Yucatan and knows something changed in 2016. He applied training in Arabic and French to other languages and disciplines such as Latin, Hebrew, Spanish, indigenous religions, ancient theology, and mystic mathematical probability theories to the tarot, runes, automatic writing. Soon, alchemy, Rosicrucianism, sacred geometry, synchronicity, Jungian psychology all started blending together and contemplating each other as if they were all the same languages spoken about the same things, but from different perspectives. That the Mandela Effect experience was a signal, a form of communication to help us locate our place in the 0 point of life's purpose. I like that. Through the gift of Claircognizance, Ted was able to communicate with his past self and cause his own personal MEs and know from a multidimensional perspective who he's meant to be in the future. Ladies and gentlemen, it is an honor and a pleasure to welcome to the IMEC 2023 our first time speaker, Tete DesJours.
All right, guys. Can you hear me? Is this good? Good. All right. If you look up here, you're going to see a variety of symbols. Some of them modern, some of them changed from like the past into modern symbols. You're going to see things that maybe you know, right? Maybe you've seen over and over again and no one explained it to you. And you're going to see some things up here that I'm not even going to get into in this presentation. I'm not going to talk about them, but where I come from, what people call intuition, what they call divine providence or luck, I call the push. And it literally feels like a push to me. So some of these symbols I just put in here because I felt like they needed to be here. Okay? Now, I want to talk about stories, and I'm so glad that the Dark Wolf came before me because he talked about big, big things, huge things, big theories. I'm not going to talk about that. I'm going to talk about little things. I'm going to talk about you and the story that makes you you. Okay, because you are important. And those memories that you have of all these Mandela effects, those are important too, and you need to remember them that way. So if the Bible is your thing, remember the Bible, right? If you are introduced to new things because of this Mandela effect, remember it the way that you remember it. Okay, that memory and that stream is important. And I'm going to try and show you today why that moved me to start researching a little bit more about who I am. Why I had to change everything about myself. Even though I was born in a very rare and unique way, and I have a very rare and unique name that I hated, that I couldn't stand, that I was embarrassed of, that people made fun of me over, it's like now that I'm here and now that I'm standing before you, I'm about to tell you some things that I still to this moment cannot believe, so I will do what my grandfather told me to do. When you make a claim, the burden of proof is on you. That's the world we live in. I will not make a claim and make you prove my claim. That is unfair. So, with that being said, I want to show you a way, at least an easy way, to change your dimension. Let me get out of here real quick. Let's close this. Oh, that's going the wrong way. All right, so when I got this idea of coming and speaking to you guys, Cynthia Sue Larson reached out to me. She says, hey, I'd like to speak to you. In about 15 minutes, I wrote up a really quick letter, and I sent it back to her, and I was like, hey, I'll talk about these things. And this is sort of the reaction of Chris Sinatra and Cynthia Sue Larson and how it sort of played out, even though I wasn't there.
Get up on your feet, this is a shakedown.
Oh, sorry.
Order up that beat just like a steakhouse. Show me you got soul inside those new shoes. And you can rock and roll with the attitudes. Just the way you like it.
Okay, so Chris basically said, you know, I can do this better than anyone. I can add a dance to this. And Tom Campbell was like,
Wow, you can really dance. You can really dance. He went. They said we've both been dancing all this time. What a coincidence.
and there was some argument between me and Shane. And I said, Shane, we don't have to argue about this. And
I'm
he
done
said,
arguing with people, all right? I don't have any more left in me, okay? You think the sky is purple? You're right, okay? You know it's a little bit more like a lavender, but I'll take your word for it. You think the earth is shaped like a hexagon? I count all 6 sides, all right?
Megs couldn't handle it anymore, so she was like,
Okay.
Holy Spirit, activate.
Oh, no.
Holy Spirit, activate. Holy Spirit, activate. 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 All right, let's go.
to which Cynthia had a very near-death experience, and, you know, our friend Marsh came to the rescue.
Dory, do you see anything?
Ah, something's got me.
That was me. I'm sorry.
Who's that?
Who's that? Who could it be? It's me.
Are you my conscience?
Yeah. I'm your conscience. We haven't spoken for a while. How are you?
Can't complain.
Yeah, good. Now, Dory, I want you to tell me, do you see anything?
I see a light.
A light?
Yeah, over there. Hey, conscience, am I dead?
Oh,
So all of this ended with me needing some serious therapy because obviously this stuff didn't happen. So I go to my really good therapist, which is my son, and he...
Hi, I'm your therapist. Hi. Are you depressed? Yes. I'm sorry to hear that. Your whole life's a fucking mess. What? Let me guess. You've got some childhood trauma. Maybe didn't get enough love from your mama. Bitch, I'm a therapist.
Okay, guys, I wanted to start off with something that was fun and unique because I tend to get really intense. And if this offended anyone, please smack me afterwards. You know, like, it's all just, for me, I try to lighten the mood because I don't like talking about this serious thing. I mean, my job in the military was to go break people's stuff and to kill them if necessary. It was very serious all the time. And in my dimension, I see things as language. When I first saw the Mandela Effect, it broke down to me the way that I learned French, the way that I learned Latin. And I saw Mandela Effect, which for me was translated just like Mandela Mode, Mandela Accountability, right? A man of accountability, a man of fashion. This was an effective man. You know, the effective human, the efficient human, the person who could see things in a way that no one else could see it. And so I started thinking that way. It's like, what can I see that means something, not to you guys, but to me? What does it mean to me? When I see this, it's, you know, the interpretation is mine, and I don't have to interpret for you anymore. That was my job. I had to interpret for other people. I started asking myself, what's the most important thing to me about me? I don't have to die anymore, right? I don't have to die for a church. I don't have to die for a religion. I don't have to die for a country. I don't have to die for a commander. So, here, let me grab this. The man of the effects is the effective or efficient man. Now, I didn't come here empty-handed. I went to the Statue of Liberty the first day I got here just to make sure that it was in New Jersey. How many people have heard that it's now in New Jersey? All right, people have heard that it's on Ellis Island, or it's not on Ellis Island anymore? Yeah, that it's on Liberty Island? Well, I have some residue from 1986. How many people have heard of Penn and Teller? Right? Okay. In 1986, they went on SNL, and they did this.
Now we'd like to address ourselves to a specific magician, Mr. David Copperfield.
Everybody remember David Copperfield
Really,
making
your
it
name?
disappear?
David Copperfield, who writes your scripts, Oliver Twist. Anyways, David, you like to do vanishes, big things, the jet, the Statue of Liberty. That's great. We could do it all, but we haven't got the money. We don't think the magicians are judged by their pocketbooks. We think they're judged by their skill. So all we need is a $2.49 jet, and you tell me, Mr. Copperfield, where does it go? That sucker's gone, David. And in short sleeves, too. You did the Statue of Liberty, didn't you, Mr. Copperfield? We don't need Ellis Island. We don't need radar. We don't need helicopters. See that lady right there? She's in Teller's.
There is the New York, New Jersey line, and there's the Statue of Liberty practically on the Jersey Shore. When I first looked this up, when I heard that it had changed, it was smack dab in the middle. I found an article that had said that they were sharing the custody of this particular island. I've never heard once of someone saying, I'm going to New Jersey to see the Statue of Liberty. I don't know about you. I've never heard anyone say, oh, I'm so glad I got my Statue of Liberty I Heart New York t-shirt with the Statue of Liberty on. I've never seen that. Right? Or I've never seen the New Jersey version of that. Like, you think that they would want to book in on that marketing. All right, so here's the overview. I'm going to give you some street cred. I'm going to tell you why I chose to do this. I'm going to tell you why maybe you chose to do this in a very unique way, where I'm just like, hey, what lines up? What lines up about the time frame? Like maybe 2016 means a lot to people down here. I'm going to talk about writing it down. As you notice, like I always come up here with massive amounts of notes. It's a way that I remember things, and I'm able to remember them very, very quickly. I take huge offense when someone says, you misremembered things, because that was my job to remember things. That was my job to know what somebody was saying when they said it. Okay, and then I was like, that I wasn't sitting there going, I wonder if they meant to say this. We're going to talk about, of course, Mandela Effect, the warrior versus the mystic path, or what you call the hero's journey. Now, Cynthia Sue Larson did an amazing job talking about the hero's journey at the last IMEC in 2019. I watched that, and it was fantastic. But what I was feeling over and over as I was watching it, it's like, I don't feel like a hero anymore. I'm not out looking for my elixir anymore. I'm sitting here, I can't get rid of this synchronicity stuff. What is it that these synchronicities are telling me, and why is this important? I started wondering, I was like, am I supposed to define this? Maybe I need to define it for myself first, and that's what I've been spending my time doing over the last 7 years. The story's untold, need to make it a good one. Does anyone know where this is from?
If you think you're psychic, maybe you are. Federal studies are being conducted in your community. Would you like to know more?
Anyone heard of a movie called Starship Troopers? Right? Anyone remember that? There were all these little ads that was saying, hey, come check this out, be a part of this, working for us, we'll guarantee citizenship. Well, I remember there was a part of this where the main character actually has to take this test. And he's taking his test with his best friend. And his best friend is saying, he's screwing up, he's screwing up, he's screwing up. And I remember constantly that he's screwing up. Watch the dialogue. The dialogue doesn't change in this at all. But he actually gets it right. He actually does have this psychic ability. And if this is right, then his friend must be lying to him. And that's not how the story goes. The story goes, he can't get it right, so he ends up joining a part of this military that is sort of like the Marines. They go in and get shot at. Because he's not a psychic, he can't go and be part of the intelligence community. Check this out.
Don't think about it. Just go on instinct. Try to visualize it.
He always gets this wrong.
I see the Ace of Spades.
It's the Ace of Spades.
Statistically speaking, you should have accidentally guessed right by now. Try another.
Still goes
Some
on
of
as
my
if he got
psychic
it wrong.
abilities are 0 and I'm unlucky.
But listen to what happens
That's
afterwards.
not a factor. No one really knows why some people are sensitive and some aren't. Who knows? Maybe it's a new stage of human evolution.
Did you hear that? I would never have picked up on that because I was so busy looking at something else. That change caused me to listen to what came after. I didn't care about the idea that it might be a new stage of human evolution. I didn't care about the plausible idea that this change had something to do with me changing. And I didn't want to accept that I changed because I like who I am. I enjoy being me. I'm a pretty nice guy. Until the government tells me that you're not. Okay, so the down and dirty about me. I was born on June 30th, 1981 in Phoenix, Arizona. I was born in the year of the rooster, otherwise known as the Phoenix, right? I didn't start looking these things up. I didn't care that I was born in this place. I didn't care I was born in this time. But when I started seeing these things over and over again that have to do with death and rebirth, I started asking questions. Okay, I was the firstborn of my family. Now, I came from a background of Mormonism. In Mormonism, genealogy is extremely important. You know, who is born first takes a very big role in the family. I was told constantly by my parents, I was told constantly by my grandparents that I had a role to play, not just for my brothers, but for my whole family, because I wasn't just the firstborn of my family, I was the firstborn of both sides of my grandparents. I was their first grandchild. I didn't have any cousins that were smaller, that were younger than me. In Mormonism, there are a lot of rituals. The first ritual you all know is circumcision. The second ritual comes on after 2 weeks, where they go into a chapel, a group of men who study in the order of Melchizedek, grab a child, and they give him a name and a blessing. This is the name that they gave me. My name was August Jerome Day. That was my name. I went to kindergarten with that name. I went to 3 different high schools with that name. I joined the military with that name. They called me Sergeant Day. I got out. You know, I didn't care. I really didn't care. When people ask me, like, why are your parents so dumb? Didn't they know your last name was Day? You know, they always made fun of me. They bullied me. They were just like, August, what a stupid name. Didn't you know? This is a month. Like, and your last name, I mean, if you were August Harper, it'd be okay. But you're August Day. Come on, that's silly. No one does that. And I had to start asking myself that question. Why did my parents do this to me? Back when it was cool where everyone went by AJ, I was like, please, let me go by AJ so I don't have to go through this. But then that changed because then I started bullying people. You know, when I got out and I started looking back at this, everything started to make sense. The synchronicity started to line up. I have 2 uncles that they're the firstborn of their family, and their names are David. Okay? I started comparing this with things that I had been taught in my Mormonism about the house of David. I started looking into things like astrology, astrotheology. I started looking at different concepts of how to learn language. I'd been taught all these things about cryptology. I've been taught Arabic. I've been taught French. I'm going, I can understand. If this is a language, if these synchronicities, if these things line up, then I can go, hey, apple means palm in French. And then just vice versa. Hey, here's a synchronicity. I have 2 uncles named David. What does that mean? And they're the eldest in their family. So I started going back down genealogy. And if you guys don't know this, the Mormon Church is probably one of the biggest genealogy researchers in the world. Okay? I followed the path of priesthood. I was baptized at 8 years old. I became a deacon by 12. I was a priest by 16. And at 18 years old, I was inducted to the same priesthood under the idea that I would earn the unconditional love of my parents. I became an elder. This is a mystical title. This is the same thing as guru, saint, medicine man, mystic, or anything else you want to pull up that says, hey, this guy works in a different realm and he challenges death every day. The name on this building was the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. That didn't mean anything to me. I didn't care. So at 23, I threw all of that away and I joined the military. And to be honest, it was because I got someone pregnant. And I wanted to be a responsible man, and I wanted to take care of my kid. 5 months later, that child died. And I was stuck. And I said, you know what? I don't care if I die anymore. I'll kill whoever you want me to kill. I trust you that these are bad people, and I just want to do the right thing. So for 12 years, that's what I did. I went all over the world. And at 35, I got out. This is a map of all the places I lived. I never lived in the same place for more than 3 years my whole life. If you count all these places up, I stopped counting after 30, or at least that's what the map thing told me I couldn't do past. There's like, sorry, past 30, you need to pay for it. And so I started looking at all the places that I had been. I was like, man, I've been to a lot of different places. What do I want to do now? At the moment of getting out, I said, no, I want to go to Portland. I want to do tattoos. I want to play piano. And I want to talk crap to anybody I can, because in the military, I couldn't talk crap to anyone. In the church, I couldn't talk crap to anyone. And when I say talk crap, I mean I wanted to say what I wanted to say when I wanted to say it. All right? I wanted to say, this is what I think about religion. This is what I think about the religions that I found in Korea, or I found in Afghanistan, or what I think about Islam, because I had to, for 2 years and 4 months, I had to study Arabic for almost 12 hours a day. And I couldn't tell the people from Islam that, no, I'm not a kafir. No, I'm not an infidel. No, I'm not loyal to Allah. But I can see why you are, because you never left. You never saw the rest of the world. That your Allah and that Jesus Christ over there, right, and that Buddha and that Krishna, right, are all attempting to give you a story. And that story is to be better than you are. I didn't have anyone like that because I had thrown mine away. So I started asking myself, why do I want to be better? You know, I'll pass through that. At the same time these synchronicities were starting in 2016, the pushes were starting. And I was arguing with these pushes. Hardcore. In 2015, I broke my hand. Nothing went wrong with the surgery when they put it back together. I went and started doing tattoos. Everything was fine. The weirdest thing started happening. I got expelled from my tattoo school over nothing. And the push says, you're good, go to school. Go back to school. I was like, I've already been to 8 universities. I'm not going to go to any more. I went to another tattoo school. The moment I paid them, my hand started throbbing. It hurt so bad. I went to the doctor, and the doctor says, hey, everything looks pretty good. The scar's fine. Nothing's infected. You've been fine for, it's just early onset arthritis. I was like, just do an x-ray, please. They did an x-ray, and they found this. They found it sticking out of my bone. And so every time I shook someone's hand, it was the serrated edge of that screw was ripping up the inside of my hand. The only way that could have happened was if in 2015, the doctor screwed it into that position because the bone had completely healed around it. I was so confused that I went and found the Polaroid that they gave me saying, hey, here's what your hand looks like now that we sewed it up. Because they had to give that to me to say that I was a good patient and that everything was good to go. I was expecting to see that this was something that I did. Maybe I played the piano too hard. Maybe I karate chopped something. I don't know. But that Polaroid from 2015 had this same picture in it. I'm like, no, I carried boxes. I did all these things. My hand didn't hurt. Now all of a sudden, out of nowhere, it started hurting. It started making me think. I had to give up tattooing because of this, because my hand started shaking. They did another surgery, and they pulled it out, and they pulled all the pins out. And they said, sorry, you don't want to do this because your bone's basically Swiss cheese now. You don't want to have to do these techniques in order to tattoo that require a lot of pressure on this side of your hand. So I was like, well, I guess I'll go to school now. So that's what I did. Yeah, I gave that up, the final moment of this was the idea that I got taught a lesson. Push was something that I needed to take seriously. And that there were consequences for not following it. Now, I know that sounds scary to you guys, but please understand that I have a very unique personality, and I get hit a lot for being, rebellious. I mean, think about my life. I told my parents I am not doing that religion. At a certain point in my military career, I said, no, I can't work for you anymore because you wear a tie and you never went through basic. At that time, I took up Tai Chi because I needed something to center me. And I couldn't run anymore because I had multiple surgeries on my leg. So I did yoga and I did Tai Chi every morning. And after 6 months of doing this, I didn't know why. I mean, I was paying these ridiculous prices to go to this stupid Tai Chi thing. I was paying like $140 a month just to go do this. But I was following the push. The push told me to do this. And so I'm sitting here going, okay, yeah, whatever. A lady walks into that specific gym. She walks up to me. She goes, I know who you are. I'm like, lady, I don't know you. I'm just trying to make sure I get the form right. Like whatever. She goes, I need you to call this person. He lives in Virginia Beach. I make a phone call. The guy on the other side of the line was so specific. He gave me exact dates. And for me in the military, exactness and efficiency was important. I took it seriously because he took it seriously. He says, you will do this. You will move out of your apartment before the end of the month. And I said, what? I just got my hand fixed. I'm not carrying boxes. I'm not doing this stuff or anything like that. Let's just say it ended with a gun and someone breaking into my house. And I said, no, I'm moving. He also told me to go to this event. This was a solar eclipse that happened on August 21st, 2017. It was right next to Portland where I was. He's like, you need to see this. So I did. I went there. I stood there, and nothing happened. Nothing happened. I was like, okay, I did what you told me to do. Great, whatever. On the way home, I had just got a brand new book from Penny Pierce called Frequency. I don't know if anyone has heard of that book. Penny Pierce, and it's called Frequency. I started listening to this book. This book led me to another book, and that book led me to another book. I'm going to talk about that here in a little bit. But the goals of this presentation is to first give you the warning, all right? If you start down this road, if you go down this road and you start fighting with this ability, you will be taught a lesson in your way, not my way, all right? Because my way is a very different way. But you'll be given lessons in your way because it's not about me, it's about you. The stories that you have in your life, the stories that you've been told, every story you've been told, from little kid stories to the moon landings to the conspiracy theories, these make you who you are. Those experiences that you had with Curious George or Fruit Loops, right, or Pokemon, right? That's what stuck out about you. It's like, hey, I remember that because there was an emotional attachment to that object of a memory. These are the 4 things. If you write these things down, that's it. I will consider this done. I will consider everything that I've done here fine and finished, and all the stuff I'm about to say about quantum, all the stuff that I'm about to say about, who I am and how I use this to help myself, right, is not important as these 4 things. Context is king. Context. And the context is decided by you. It's not decided by, Mr. Marsh. It's not decided by the Dark Wolf. It's not decided by, any coach out there. You have to decide how many push-ups you want to do. You have to decide, when you get up in the morning. The hardest order you will ever give is to yourself. A mind blown is a mind grown. You will see things and you will go through things that you cannot believe. Please believe that you are growing. Faith. This is a word that I take very seriously. I do not like it. I can't stand it. It's something that I felt was part of my afterlife insurance salesmanship in my religion. That's what I was selling to people. But I gained a new appreciation for it when I started looking into time and how it works. Faith is making a decision about the future based on the decisions you made in the past. If no one told you about Jesus or Allah, right, or Krishna or Buddha, you cannot make a decision to make that person a very big story in your life. It is important when those events happen, and I like to call those events keyframes. Intuition comes last. Now, there's a lot of people said, hey, I got an intuition and then I acted, but they never ask where that intuition came from. They usually, it just came from the universe. Sure, whatever. But in the scheme of things, the way that I found it was that it comes last in the order of operations. Now, in the military, we have these things that we call, SOPs, and, there's standards of, procedures. And you have to follow them directly. When I started coming up with my own in the military, because I would get really good, I would be called what's called a subject matter expert, they would say, you need to come up with the SOPs now. You need to write them. So I was like, what would happen if I wrote an SOP about intuition? Where would it come? Would I be like, sit down and get intuition first? And I was like, no, I found out that intuition comes last. All right, so when these stories are being told, who's telling the story? Is it a priest? Is it a guru? Is it a psychedelic? Is it a president? Is it a PhD? Is it someone who really, really, really knows? And you have to decide what part of that display of information that you are going to accept into yourself. I can sit here and tell you this stuff all day long, but unless you go, hey, that stuck out to me, that resonated with me, and that I have intuition. Why was I told to look at this? Because we've all had that ability or had that experience where we're talking to somebody and it never kicks off. That intuition never happens. And they look off and they say, yeah, that's great, whatever. And you want to tell them how important this is and how this could change your life. My question to you is, what if that really is their intuition? That's their intuition telling them, you're not ready for this. And you're not respecting it. I learned this lesson the hard way when I lost my last brother. See, I was born, I had 6 younger brothers. One of them died of SIDS. One of them died in birth. And the other one died of suicide. I only had 3 brothers left. 2 of them says they can't talk to me anymore because it causes them anxiety. My last brother, that we were so close. And I can't come around anymore because I took him to take psychedelics. And that is a very no-go place for the religion that he was in, which was Mormonism. And his wife divorced him over it. And said in the divorce papers that if I come around, that the judge could put him in jail. And he says it's better if we don't talk anymore. You could be a combination of all these things. Your experiences, what the priest said, what the psychedelic said, what the professor said. Be open to that and see where you're giving all this information and where you're giving that, saying, hey, that power that I'm giving, it's all going to the commander, right? Do I really trust that commander? Maybe he really is a good person, but that could shift tomorrow. Ralph Waldo Emerson said, there is no truth so sublime that it might become trivial tomorrow in the light of new thoughts. Not new deeds, not new actions, thoughts. All right, so when ME happens, gets really weird because we don't have anyone telling us what it is. We're so used to going to the internet. We're so used to saying, tick, 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 tick. Who's saying this? Who's talking about this? Maybe I'll listen to Cynthia Sue Larson. She seems to be doing a lot of stuff about that, and she has a degree in physics, right? She's someone that needs to be respected, right? Or maybe it's simulation. Maybe it's aliens. Maybe it's demons. Maybe it's angels. Who is in charge of these different categories? And after you figure out it might be one of these categories, you look for those people. I looked through Carl Jung, Eric Dubé. The earth became flat all of a sudden in 2016. I walked away from that and I said, hey, I can't give too much power. I looked into Terence McKenna. I looked into John Dee. I started traveling again and I was like, okay, where can I go and where can I see these modern gurus, right? Because to me, this was modern compared to the things that I was studying that was very, very ancient. And then I found this. Maybe it's an opportunity to define something that's actually new. How many people have heard there's nothing new under the sun? You know, I really believe that, right? But what if there is something new? And there's no one here to define it. The question that I asked earlier to Darkwolf was, what if this is us watching something that, you know, we are the first people to watch it. We're the first people to see this. We have to define it. So I said, I'm going to take this seriously. I'm going to get competitive. I'm going to start planning and I'm going to start doing execution. I want analysis with outcomes. These are the books. Like if you want to take a picture of this, these are the ones that mess with me. The first one over there is by Dr. Kirby Surprise. He is so underrated. He's a psychologist and all he does is work with people with synchronicity. Right? And he has this wonderful book called Synchronicity by Kirby Surprise. I mean, think about that. Think about his name, Dr. Kirby Surprise, right? And he talks about synchronicity events as pieces of information, the way that I could understand it, right? And he says when these pieces of information happen, you need to write them down. You need to ask, you know, why are these things happening to me? Do I want them to happen more? Would you like to know more? All right? Do you want them to stop? How important are they? Do you need to pay attention? Can you slough that off? This is what happened to me when I was doing research on this. It's like, hey, I typed in thought. You all saw it. You all saw it. I did, and that was so unique to me because there's a part in his book where he talks about the differences between SE and delusions. It is the best explanation on a psychological level that I have ever read. You know, I would like to go into it. I just don't have the time.
All right, here we go. Reverse icicles. I don't know if you can see this. I don't know if it's too translucent. But yeah. That is a reverse icicle.
Now,
pretty cool.
This is not a single occurrence. The push started saying, you need to speak to water. I looked into Moto's work. I saw what he was doing. I'm like, I don't know what to say. Push comes back. Well, talk to it as if it was you. I say, well, if I was about to turn into ice, what would I say to myself? And I thought, enjoy your transition. And that was it. Throw it in the icebox. Done.
This is what I did last night.
Give the music. It's just what I was listening to. Sending this to my brother.
I'm up to 3 now.
And I started noticing there would be 1, and then there would be 2, and then there would be 3, and they would jump up in different places. Here's another one.
You gotta see this. See the.
And they were always different. Some of them would be very pointy. Some of them would be big and fat at the top. Some of them would come out like Moana and wave at me. And I was like, I gotta record this. People aren't gonna believe me.
Defying gravity with emotion.
Has anyone ever seen anything like that? Over there, over there, over there. Yes, I would like to talk to you afterwards because I want to hear your experiences. You know, I felt so alone because I couldn't find anything online other than Moto's work. Right? Who else is talking to these things? Who else is communicating and getting a communication back? To me, that's a signature of communication. Okay. Here's a few more pictures. The tallest one I ever got was about 2 inches. Right? But as you can see, sometimes they would just, you know, form in all these different ways. And I didn't want to say, okay, could you do this for me? Could you do that for me? I was just so happy to just look at this as a friend. You know, and I was like, what was I feeling when I was doing this? And I was going back to what the push had said. The push was like, as if you were talking to yourself. All right, guys. I am a huge cinephile. I like superhero movies, especially because they have a lot in common with my life. This guy messes with tech all day and goes and fights terrorists, right? That was my job. And it came out the same year I got deployed. Same year I enlisted was this guy, Captain America, who said, hey, I will continue to fight terrorists no matter how long America needs me, right? And I'll do it forever. I wanted to be a Chief Master Sergeant. I wanted to become a legend. And I started looking at when these things came out, and I started noticing something else. When I would go to the movies, I was getting these massive pushes. Like, we're talking overwhelming. Like, I was shaking in my seat. And then I would watch something. And that same thing that I told you earlier, I was watching a different movie than everyone else. I wasn't identifying with the hero anymore. I started asking myself, well, this started in 2008. What happened in 2005 with the big one hit? When I actually joined the military, when I was, you know, saying goodbye to the freakish nature of all those rituals of Mormonism. And then 2016 happened. Does anyone remember what happened in 2016 with Doctor Strange? So Doctor Strange comes out and I see it and I'm going, I know this character, this Ancient One character. I've seen her before in another movie. And that movie has a main character that we all know. How many people have heard of Constantine? The character that plays the angel in Constantine plays the Ancient One in 2016. They have the exact same role. The exact same role. And that's when I knew that I was onto something. It was a synchronicity that I needed to pay attention to. This character helps this character, who's already a mystic, he's already a mystic, become something different. And that's when I said, hey, I'm no longer on my hero's journey, I'm on a mystic one. What does a mystic journey look like? What's inside a mystic journey? Is it the same thing in a hero's journey, just a little bit different? So I went back and I looked at one of the greatest scenes that I think I've ever seen. Oh, let me get through this. This is just another thing that I was just talking about.
We'll lead here, but never further.
This is where she dies.
This is where you die.
You wonder what I see in your future?
No. Yes?
I never saw your future, only its possibilities. You have such a capacity for goodness. You always excelled, but not because you crave success, but because of your fear of failure.
That's what made me a great doctor.
It's precisely what kept you from greatness. Arrogance and fear still keep you from learning the simplest and most significant lesson of all.
Which is?
It's not about you.
Shifting the camera.
When you first came to me, you asked me how I was able to heal Jonathan Pangborn. I didn't. He channels dimensional energy directly into his own body.
He uses magic to walk.
Constantly. He had a choice. To return to his own life, or to serve something greater than himself.
So I could have my hands back again. My old life.
You could. And the world would be all the lesser for it. I've hated drawing power from the dark dimension. But as you well know, sometimes one must break the rules in order to serve the greater good.
Mordo won't see it that way.
Mordo's soul is rigid and unmovable, forged by the fires of his youth. He needs your flexibility, just as you need his strength. Only together do you stand a chance of stopping Dormammu.
I'm not ready.
No one ever is. We don't get to choose our time. Death is what gives life meaning. To know your days are numbered, your time is short. You'd think after all this time I'd be ready. But look at me, stretching one moment out into 1,000, just so that I can watch the snow.
Let's go. I did that with my family, and I dedicated myself to a place. I wanted now to understand quantum. I want to understand general relativity and how the mechanics worked, just like a language. I started finding that if I wanted to talk to my present self and my future self, the key was through my past. I had a very weird name, a unique name. So I was like, maybe someone in the past has that name. So I started looking and looking and looking. And then I thought, why am I asking the past? Why am I not asking the future? That push came in and says, ask the future. Ask the future about your past. Because maybe in the future, you find the answer. Weird, huh? So I said, okay. General relativity predicts wormholes. I think you can create them inside of you. You can travel through those wormholes, and you can get to the place that you want, and it's fascinating. Sometimes it appears as a garden. Sometimes it appears as a library. For me, it appears as a library. I believe that the past and the future can entangle the same way that quantum particles can entangle. That they can talk to each other. Now, I want you to think about waking up. Every time you wake up, you have no problem coming back to this reality, never wondering that you were in two places simultaneously. Or maybe 3 places, maybe 4 or 5. You go outside and you stare at the heavens, or you stare at the stars up there. You are staring at the best book you will ever read. We're standing on the best book you will ever read. The difference between that and this, not in a box. Okay? Open up your mind. Go and ask yourself how quantum was. You're going to see a lot of different things that come up here about the times and dates that these things happen. I want you to understand this is how quantum computing was put together. This man is extremely important. Without him, we wouldn't have the prime factors. Now, if I'm wrong about this, Cynthia, you reach out to me and say that I'm silly. But numbers were changing for me. I was seeing everyone else, synchronicities, the 1111s, the 333s, da-da-da-da, a language being presented to me that I could finally understand. It wasn't about, hey, 333 does this or 333 does that. It was this quantum background. It was that code that's underneath our reality. I do not believe this is a simulation. I think this is something that we haven't created yet. I do not, think about how I'm saying this. I don't like the word believe. Now, this is something that Peter Shore ended with. He says, with with machine learning on digital computers. Nobody knows why it works. The only reason they know it works really well is because they've done experiments on digital computers and it just works. There's so many people. Jordy talks about this constantly, and he was the one that helped put it together. And he says, we have the ability to take this information and reach into other universes, take the resources that are there, not the physical resources, but the mental resources that are there, pull them in this dimension, and start writing out theories that help this world. If you are seeing the synchronicities, you have this ability. Okay, now how this manifests in your life, how you decide to use this, is how you choose to tell you this story. This is how I chose to do it for me. I'm going to skip through this. This is all about AI. I'm not going to talk about that. This is about time. This is sort of a model that I just put together. Future, me in the present, me in the past. How I understood it is this threshold right here is awareness. Everyone knows that when you look at something according to quantum physics, you collapse it, you change it into something else. Your future self hasn't happened yet, so it can't collapse things here. Your past self is no longer in awareness because it is dead, right? Your future self has the ability in the future, because of the technology that exists there, to communicate with the past event, to set things in motion that can hit you in the present. And that's where I believe intuition comes from. You set out an intention, your future self, your higher self, gets it, puts it into motion, into the quantum, receives it in a past life. Maybe you receive it in some past event, sort of like I did with my hand, that changed me from going down the tattooing road and put me on a path back to schooling. If it's not you, I believe it's your kids. I believe it's your children. I think it is very possible that our descendants will have this technology. This is why I want to spend every moment with my son. I want to be able to talk to him, and I want to be able to teach him how to see this world. It's not that I don't trust the government. It's that I have information now that I can't ignore. It's part of who I am. Now, we're going to shift gears here for a second and talk about language. August Jerome Day. I have chosen to tell you that my name is Tet. There's a reason behind that. Tet in French means head. DesJours means head of days. I'm the oldest of my family. It's really simple. I was told I was a leader. That's what I'm doing. I'm not here to lead you. I'm here to lead my family when they're ready. Okay? That's it. That's what I know I need to do now. Maybe one day they'll see this. People have seen this symbol all throughout humanity. This is a symbol that I put on my body a long time ago. This has been known as the sun cross, also the alchemical symbol for earth. We were talking earlier about the difference between heaven and earth. In our modern society, we talk about it as Xavier's X-Men, right? But it's still just a story. That story was made up of letters. Those letters go all the way back through time. I believe that there are people back there that we don't know their names, but we know they wrote stuff down. I don't know if you noticed, but there is a symbol in one of the oldest languages that was forgotten or that was misplaced. The name of this symbol is Tet. Tet, just like all these other symbols, had a character put to it. Door, window, hook. The symbol for Tet is good. The more I researched, the more I felt okay talking about this. I didn't want to tell anybody about this. I felt crazy. And this is where it gets really crazy. Because even though I was looking for people with my name, I couldn't find them. But I was looking for these symbols. And I found them in the Phoenician alphabet, one of the oldest ones that I could find. Now, Phoenician was spread out all over the Mediterranean, but found its way out of our culture in the 2nd century, except for one place. And that was in Tunisia in the 6th century. And it went all the way up to the 6th century, but sort of died out. Now, the reason that I bring that up, and the reason that I want you to remember that, is because there were two people that I found, Aurelius and Eusebius. They were very prolific writers back during these particular times, and they lived very close, and they actually had correspondence between each other. I haven't talked to my mother in over 20 years. She has no idea she has a grandchild, right? My father died at 55. This man went to Carthage, he lived in Tunisia, he studied there, he went to Rome, and he had some very serious problems. And he wrote about those problems. He was open about his mischievous behavior, his lustful pursuits as a womanizer. That's what I became after I said, hey, I guess I'm not a dad. I'll just go around and do the military thing and sleep with a bunch of girls, right? I don't care. I don't want to get married. He had a bunch of academic pride. I was happy to be the smartest person in the room, and I had no problem telling people that I was. He had tons of involvement in his regret of spending too much time in the theater. I mean, these were very unique things, but what really got me is where he died. He decided to go to the northern shelf of Africa in a place called Algeria, and he died in a place called Hippo. Eusebius, same thing, same stuff that he was doing. Highly educated, had a pet lion, right? Walked around with, I don't have a pet lion. He walked around trying to avoid women without taking a bath. Like he would just be like, oh, because he knew he had this same problem. He was very lustful. And so his way of dealing with it was like, I just won't take a bath and women won't like me. So when people said, why didn't you take a bath today? He's like, because the women would be all over me. And that was his response. He wrote this down. So I started noticing there were similarities. He traveled for almost 20 years. I've never lived in the same place for more than 3 years my whole life. He lived in Trier, Germany, right next to where I was stationed. He ended up in Bethlehem, where I was stationed in Hatzor. Right? And that's where he died. Now, both of these people communicated over a very particular bit of the Apocrypha, what we know are the exterior of the Bible. One of those is the book of Enoch. That's what got me into the book of Enoch. It wasn't anything else. I started reading the book of Enoch, I was like, hey, I've never read this before, I want to see this story. Here is the verse that freaked me out. And there I saw one who had the head of days. This part of the story is where Enoch goes to heaven. And he's walking around with the angel Uriel, and he says, hey, who's that guy over there walking with the Son of Man? I don't know who he is. Now, since I found this, it was about, I don't know, maybe 3 or 6 months I went back to it. There were 5 more verses. Now there's like 10. Aurelius had a first name. So did Eusebius. He went by Haromi. This is in Spain. My only claim is that I was born in 1981 in Phoenix, Arizona. These are just weird facts to me, okay? And my name when I was born in 1981 was August Jerome Day. Once again, this is how I think. This is my theory. You don't have to listen to it. I believe that I am living the heaven of these men. Education is everywhere. I can study philosophy at my whim. I don't owe anybody anything. No one's asking me to write anything for them. I don't have to live for somebody else. And I am living the dream of an existence that I think had to do with these men. That is just a theory. That is not anything more than that. My claim is that I was born in Phoenix, Arizona, in the year of the rooster. That was it. So, this is the last slide. It's just a combination of letters that I received from the Pentagon with my name all over it, my name on the top of these things, because you guys could say, oh, he just made all this stuff up. He just, whatever. Thank you. That is the end of my presentation.
Wonderful job, man. Wonderful job. Thanks.
All right, Ted, I also was a convert to the Mormon Church, believe it or not. I know quite a bit about that, and you're right, they are the biggest genealogy things ever. So I've got a joke about that, but I probably shouldn't put it on camera because my ex-wife might get mad. Anyways, if we got questions for Ted, go ahead and line them up here. All right, and go ahead, sir, you're first.
Okay. So is it possible that our sense of liberty is quantum locked with the position of the Statue of Liberty And if we focus on pushing it back to Manhattan, we'll get...
You have just taken the words right out of my mouth. That these symbols are acting in a very unique way, and I'm wondering why our future selves are showing us these things. The idea goes like this. They can change some things, but they can't change everything. And that's a law that I think comes into effect once we realize what we're doing in the future. That law has to be made. And that law needs to say, hey, I can change a little part of Curious George. I can change a little part of Waldo, but I can't mess with it enough that it affects your memory. It doesn't change the fact that I was looking for Waldo, right, whether or not he had a cane. It doesn't change the fact that I was enjoying Fruit Loops, right? But I now notice to pay attention to that feeling when I was enjoying Fruit Loops. That feeling was bliss, happiness. Can I do this every day? Can I do this every day? Think of it as if you were a child. Can I do this every day? And look at the correlation between that and the Mandela effects. When it comes to the Statue of Liberty, right, think about, hey, I remember a time where I actually felt like I'm in the best country in the world, and liberty is everywhere. And now I'm watching it move further and further and further away from its position. And I'm going, what does that mean? And if I had to say something right now, I'm like, it doesn't want to be where it's at. Simple as that. Keep it simple. There's a method in the military when things get too complicated. We call it the KISS method.
Keep it simple, stupid.
Thank you. So, yeah, I think you're right onto it.
All right, thank you.
And thank you, sir. All right, next.
Love the presentation, really awesome, very emotional speaking to me, and a lot of the messages I've been getting as well. Really appreciate it. Also experienced the ice thing and them going up an icicle, so appreciate it and not going
Try
crazy
it out.
with that.
Like, seriously, go home, do it.
Yeah.
I mean, I think nothing is better than personal proof. This is just an example, so go ahead.
Exactly, and to touch on that, I'd say it's like everything is consciousness, and it talks back to you when you acknowledge it and respect it and want to work with you, like the elementals of all existence. And I found also Ormus, the orbitally rearranged monotonic elements, if that's an ice, it like starts to peak up a lot more, and also it has something to do with the fourth phase of water bringing matter out of existence and something like that. I'd also look into your DNA having to do with like ice dragons and Jotun and the ice giants from Jotunheim realm, and also past life things connected to authority that not everyone has. Other people have other things like. So
I will remind that it is one question, just so you're aware.
So yeah, thank you. So in the movie Rabbit Holes, for people starting out in that, and I do a lot of that, and the soul kind of like, hey, go watch this, it will complete a part of yourself. And I see you making like cinema tarot in the future or something that like helps people know stuff. What would you give in advice for people starting on a journey and they're using media and things that like may speak to them in a resonant way?
I will give you the same advice that Frank Sinatra gave. Yeah, do it your way. I did it my way. Do it your way. That your way is the unique thing. Your memory is the thing that's going to trigger it. When I look back at all the things that happened to me, it was me telling myself this. I told myself, hey, I'm going to go over here and do this thing. 3 days before the world was shut down by COVID, I had plane tickets to Astana, Kazakhstan. If you've never heard of that place, please go look it up. All right? There's a world there that didn't exist 20 years ago. And it is fascinating. Full of symbols. That's what I got.
Thank you very much.
No worries.
That country has grown immensely. It is.
I was going there, and I was stopped.
We can discuss that later. That's an incredible country. A buddy of mine did a radio show on it.
I was going to be there for 3 months, yeah.
Joe, you've got a question. Go ahead, sir.
Thank you so much for a fantastic presentation. Appreciate that. And at one point during, you had mentioned the future, perhaps on a quantum level, communicating with the past,
yes,
and affecting the present.
That's correct.
Have you ever been led to believe, or do you think possibly there's something we can do in the present as the past future to perhaps superimpose something in the past that will affect our future going forward?
I feel that the Head of Days scriptures were not there before I started setting intentions to tell me that this was true. that possibly my research was going somewhere. These men had access to these ideas that were being written at the time. They were conferring on what has erupted into your Christianity today. Without St. Augustine, there would be no schools. Without the Augustinian monks, there would have been no Timus Aquinas. Right? There would have been no great university in France. So what I'm saying is, if you are feeling that you want to change something, I would say go find somebody in the past, right? Be led to find that person. And then ask your future self, right? Because you haven't met your future self. But your future self has had all the experiences that you are having right now, including asking this question. Right? It will know everything about you. When people say higher self or God or whatever, I'm going, think of the wisest person that already has technology to use it in an appropriate way. It's driving a quantum car that you have no idea about. And it will know how to drive back to the past, use your past lives to send you messages, even if that message is on a level that hits you as intuition. It will not, as far as I'm concerned, that I don't understand how that manifests into the physical other than it was done in the past, sort of like my hand. Something happened in the past that was changed. So what I would say is, like, look at those changes that are happening to you and find those dates and go back to that date and go, hey, who was in charge there? I was in charge when my hand got broken. Is there a version of me, and does that version of me in the far, far past share keyframes with me where I can learn to trust it? Even though I don't trust Christianity at all in its modern form. So I would highly recommend, if you're going to go down this path, look for things that have happened in your life. Maybe you broke a leg. Maybe, you fell that one time and it left a scar. Maybe there's a part in the past where there's a version of you that wrote that down, or it left a message in a certain way. Gravestones are some of the best. They usually leave a message that is only meant to serve as a marker for the future. So if you have a question about the past, I just highly recommend listen to your push, listen to your intuition, because that's where it's coming from. If there's going to be a change that hits you, it's not going to come from you wanting it from the future as much as it has to come from the back into the future so that your future self can know about it. There was a concept called the butterfly effect where this solves that problem, because the person in the future isn't going into his future, right? He's only allowed to go into his past. And he's only allowed to change one person's past, and that's yours, because he has to suffer the consequences. So trust your future. Trust yourself.
Thank you very much. Greatly appreciate it. Thank you.
And thank you, Joe. That was a great question. Who do we have up next? Yes, ma'am. Go ahead.
I don't have a question. I just want to comment on your the disappearing Statue of Liberty thing. Jerry, did we not have this conversation last night at the Hibachi Grill?
When he brought it up, I so thought about that too.
David
We were literally, yes,
Copperfield
ma'am.
moving the Statue of Liberty. And as I told Jerry, I said, I think they were practicing on their smoke and mirrors technique. And that's why they had the public display to see how it would work. Because now, if you'll notice, it also sits on top of a star fort.
Yeah.
That is incredible. Yeah, there's a heck of a synchronicity. When he started going into it, I was wondering, wow, how far is he going? Yeah, exactly. We were literally discussing that at dinner last night when you were like, what, one table over? Right.
Yeah, and notice that I did this weeks ago.
Right. Yeah. Oh, that's something else I found. Go ahead and come up to the mic. Something else I found is the synchronicities through the talks. You guys didn't get together, and I made this point to the audience the other day. You guys didn't get together and plan your talks together. Hey, we're going to put this word in, or we're going to all go with this concept within the concept. You know what I mean? But yesterday it was fruit. The day before that it was love. We had a theme that keeps flowing through these talks, which is really amazing. Statue of Liberty. That's an interesting theme for today. Freedom. I like the theme.
Freedom.
There we go. Hey, what do you got, bud?
Hey, how's it going, Ted? Awesome job. We've been building a little bit of rapport throughout the conference, and I know that you are, like myself, quite a man of symbolisms and everything else, and I think magical intention, right? So, symbolism is all about that personal deocculting of meaning, and of course it's that belief in magic which can drive your will to make changes in accordance to making your world better, right? So have you done any per se experimentations with magical symbolism to help take control of your personal timeline, regardless of whatever the Mandela effects may be, and any measure of success or any ideas about symbolism and use of navigating our new understanding of time?
Okay. Thank you for the question. Any advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic. Everyone has heard of that. When I decided to throw away my life, and I say that in a very unique way, it was very traumatic. I had to leave because circumstances had changed. I got my first tattoo 2 weeks before I went and joined the military. And it was the symbol of a dragon and a phoenix. Okay, intertwined. This was going to be my new way to talk to people of religion. Like if someone said, I believe in God, I believe in this, I'm going to go, you know what I believe in? There's opposites everywhere, and you can find them in any mythology, including the one I just made. Ha ha ha! Right? And I just wanted to do it not so much as a joke, but as an idea of like, I will bend to the will that is here. If there is a world outside of this one, I will figure it out when I get there. And right now, in time, I feel like I'm getting there. I didn't know what I was doing when I did this. So I just want to let you know, like if you get this, if you get this push to put something on your body, remember you are going to your box with it. You are going to the grave with it, right? Take it seriously. Every tattoo I have probably took over a year to develop. Do not do this willy-nilly. Okay, it's serious.
Yes, fully agreed.
And I would add to that, actually, when we look at things like the Emoto water experiment, and when the experiment, of course, is putting words or symbols on the jars and detecting. So these tattoos, these symbols, these whatever you put are going on your body. Your body's mostly water, so remember, you're affecting your own self with some of these tattoos you're putting on yourself. If you're putting symbols with negative intent, now I don't mean negative symbols. I mean symbols that you put the negative intent into. To you, that's negative. If a pentagram is negative to me, and I put a pentagram on my arm, I'm probably going to start experiencing a lot of bad luck or bad issues because, it's negative to me, and to me I put negative energy into myself. So, I just wanted to go with that, how that connects to Emoto.
No, the reason I did it was for defense. I wanted to defend myself from people that wanted to tell me that it has to be the Jesus way, or it has to be the Krishna way, or it has to be this way. And I said, it can be any way you want. Just be excellent to each other and party on, dude.
Party on, dude. What a great movie. Go ahead.
I'll be quick. So that was amazing. So amazing. So thank you so much for that. Also, as you're speaking about the dragon and the phoenix, you might want to check out Chinese, ancient Chinese, because they do have those two symbols coexisting often. And then I have a quick comment on this symbol right here. You might be familiar with this, but in astrology, it corresponds to something called the part of fortune. So I just want to put that out. And then my question is, when I was looking through the bios of everybody before this conference started, I noticed a pattern of a lot of 2016, 2017, and for me personally, I feel like that was a big shift point in the trajectory of the way our planet is going, and I'm just wondering, what that might mean to you, that time period.
So this is another synchronistic event. St. Augustine had at 35, in 2016 I was 35, had a massive shift in his life. This is when he decided to dedicate himself to Christianity. This is when he decided to go to his mother and he says, hey, I'm done with this. I'm done with this lifestyle, and I'm going to dedicate myself to this mystical understanding that ended up becoming Christianity. In a way, I felt the same thing happened to me. It wasn't that I was, in his version, he's praying in a garden and he hears a voice to go look up a particular scripture. And from that point on, he says he dedicated, and that was his conversion story. For me, I didn't have that. I wasn't screaming out for Jesus. I wasn't screaming out for anything. I just wanted to know. And then I was presented with a concept that most people in this, that study Christianity call a heresy. It's known as Gnosticism. Right? I went down a Gnostic path, and that's how I discovered claircognizance. Right? It was through this ability of just knowing. it coincided with the push. And so I was like, okay, here's synchronicity, synchronicity, synchronicity. I'm going to go with this. It's sort of like reading the pattern of catching a football. The ability to throw a football is so complex, or a baseball. You have to line up everything, release it at the exact right time, right? The person who's going there has to read where you're throwing it by your body position and then catch it. All of those movements are a synchronistic event. So that's exactly what I did in 2016. I looked at that and I said, my life was one way. I was becoming the legend of the Air Force that I wanted to be. I was on my way to the Pentagon. I wanted to go work there. I have letters of recommendation saying this is what you're going to do in a very unique, almost moment. I was in the synchronistic realm talking about Mandela effects and flat Earth and different dimensions. I'm just saying when a world like that presents itself in that unique way, all right, I think it's very rare. I think it's going to be a little bit more subtle than that. So my best suggestion is when that happens, like 2016, I think was an epicenter for a lot of people. I think it's a gigantic collective keyframe. I think it's a plot from the future that says this is where we can leave a big, huge hole for the collective world. And so that the unique people that start seeing this stuff will start talking about it. And those talks will start to become serious. Right? I still think that we're at the head of that. I still think that we're just now barely watching this flower bloom. But I do think 2016 was when it broke ground.
Okay, thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen,
No
Ted
worries.
DesJours!